watching the news is not always a good thing. That's why I decided to make this video. I'm gonna tell you over the next couple of minutes why I stopped watching the news, my advice on how to quit watching the news, and the reasons why maybe you should also stop watching the news. First of all, a quick introduction about my background story when it comes to news. When I was a child and then in high school, I couldn't have been less interested in news, politics, and the economy. Basically, you could just scare me away by starting a conversation about the news. Later on, however, when I was 17 and 18 and started studying, one of my main subjects was economy and history, and actually revolved a lot around being informed and staying up to date and watching the news. Now, it was my known choice to go for this path because I knew I couldn't stay isolated for the rest of my life, and I should at some point really learn to be informed, but in the right way, meaning that I should know more about the background of history, the economy, understand how things work, and be able to look at the news in a more critical way. However, later it became more like an obligation. I felt like I really had to keep up to date and be informed a lot. And I must say that I only realized how detrimental it was to me when I took a sabbatical from my job. And after 9 months, I finally was preparing for a new job interview for a new position. And in an effort to get prepared for that interview, I started diving deep into the news again. So I was reading the news, watching the news a lot in every minute of my spare time just to get up to date, because during my sabbatical I really kind of switched off. A few days in, I noticed a slight depression and also a fear that was coming, and I had thoughts like World War III might be coming, and I really wondered where it was coming from. Now I know that at least part of it, maybe not all of it, but part of it was because I was binge watching news and it wasn't doing me good. That's when I decided to be more careful and select what type of news and what type of information I was going to be watching. Without further ado, now let's look at the how-to. Like, if you want to stop watching the news now, how would you go about it? I think that's when we should really apply a little bit of what we know about changing habits here. So number one, think about your environment. You gotta make your environment your friend, which means that can be quite difficult when it comes to news, but no worries. You can start with checking your phone, because I think that your phone is probably the most invasive way news get to you. So delete the apps that are related to news, or if you don't want to be that drastic, at least try and hide the apps by grouping them, and then stop the notifications so that you don't get notified every time something new comes out in the feed. Also, what I didn't realize at first is that there is kind of some automatic setting that shows you some news in the feed when your screen is kind of blocked or something. So I had to go into the settings and actually change that so that my phone wouldn't randomly show me news from any source just to tell me today this happened and this happened. But I don't want to know, because I want to selectively choose the information I am going to receive. When it comes to your environment, what about your computer? If you are the type of person that checks the news websites too often, then definitely head for a site blocker. And if you have a TV, you're a TV watcher, I'm pretty sure that the modern TVs allow you to remove channels. And that's not a problem. Most of the time you will be able to reactivate the site or put in the channel for just the moment where you selectively want to watch news. But at least it will be one step more and more complication for you to access the news if you're a little bit addicted to it. Now, social media, very important. Go through your social media and definitely select and unsubscribe whatever you don't want to see anymore. Unsubscribe from the YouTube channels, don't follow the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook pages, whatever, of news channel, because this will trigger you big time, and most of the time I think that you can wait until You choose to see the information unless your job really depends on it. So I would definitely recommend stopping everything from getting into your feed that is not desired nor not carefully selected. Same with your emails. Definitely unsubscribe from the newsletters that will trigger you and are related to news. All right, we've talked about the environment. Now it's time to talk about your own behavior, because just setting up your environment right will probably not be enough. So first of all, my advice would be really look for a substitute. If you're a little bit addicted to news and it's become a habit, then most likely it will be too difficult for you to just stop watching. You will need some sort of activity that will be able to be your substitute for that instant gratification that you normally have when you start craving watching the news. Here is the thing, I can only accompany you partly on this road because everyone's really different. So the reason why you watch the news and the reason why you really like it is probably different from your neighbors. So you gotta go with a trial and error process. But here's a few things that you could try out and then see whether they work for you or bring you at least on the right path. First of all, you can maybe use the time where you feel this craving to write to your friends and family, because maybe you're looking for some sort of interaction and this could be a better way to get it. Another thing would be to actually carefully select videos that you actually want to watch, documentaries, informative videos such as, I don't know, how to write a novel or something, and then watch those instead. Have them ready beforehand. That's important because your brain, once triggered by the craving, will not last long in resisting watching the news. You can of course also select blog posts or maybe have a novel that you want to keep reading in between whenever you feel this craving. Another thing might be to journal. You know, just journaling is very powerful, especially for changing habits. So maybe you can journal about what's happening, you know, and why you crave watching the news, or whatever comes to your mind and feels good to journal about. You're just trying to to give your brain some sort of gratification for the craving it's having. You just have to hit the sweet spot and understand which one it is exactly. And I've said it before, but I'm gonna mention it again. It is really important that you are prepared beforehand. So you gotta make a plan right now. Take a pen and paper and prepare for a substitute for when this craving to watch the news happens. Because once it happens, it's probably too late. That's not the moment where you're gonna make a plan and say, oh, right, I didn't want to watch the news, so what do I do now? It's too late. Your brain wants something right now. It's used to get it right now. So you will probably end up caving in and just giving your brain what it wants. So be prepared in advance. Step number 3 is learn from your mistakes. Actually, one of the ways to make sure you stick to your habit that is scientifically proven is definitely when you learn the lessons, you journal about it, and then you actually prepare for whatever challenge will come up in the future and make a plan. That's the best way for you to make sure that you will improve and stick with the habit. So take your pen and paper once again and do that right now. Okay, now that you've heard about the how-to, I just want to emphasize again the reasons why you may want to stop watching news. First of all, you should be aware of the fact that visual information is very, very impactful on your psyche. So know that the news have a certain bias towards negativity, because negativity, fear, and all these feelings that tend to be rather bad for us, they actually are the best to grab our attention. So the news will be biased toward that kind of information. This can, however, lead to a slightly more depressive or negative view on the world that you would normally have. Also, because of the pressure on the news industry and on, you know, grabbing attention, having the views, and producing content daily, very often you may have a less good quality of what you're watching if you're watching the news. It will be more prone to be information that is not well researched, and you will probably not have the opportunity to actually check on the sources of what you're seeing. And once again, know that the information mix is carefully selected in order to maximize views and audience most of the time. So it is not really tailored to your specific needs, and generally it is tailored to quite negative information. We've said that, but keep that in mind. It may be the information that would be really good, you're not getting it like that. One last thing is that daily news tend to be very repetitive. Of course, it kind of needs to be, because someone who's just coming in and interested in knowing what's the big burning issues at the moment may want to have just a quick snapshot. But the matter of the fact is that if you consume them daily, then you will probably go over and over the same material over again and not have very deep insights, only the shallow information that is kind of a snapshot from what's happening. But most of the time, big matters don't move much from one day to another, so you will tend to lose a lot of time. So it is my opinion that if you stop or at least reduce watching the news, especially the daily news, this will free your time, energy, and quite a bit of your mental space. However, after actually having a lot of time pre-off the news, I would love myself to start reading more news again. I guess the why and how I would get to read more news again is probably for another video if it interests you guys. But for now, if you need to stay up to date and feel like you do want to consume some news, then here's a few things that I recommend. First of all, be very selective about your source. I would definitely tend to shift from dailies to weeklies, because weekly magazines or podcasts have more time to kind of get in depth into the information. It depends, of course, on the source. So this is another work you have to do. Choose reputable sources. Also go for non-visual. It's probably better, because with visuals, people can trigger you much more on an emotional level, and you don't really need that in order to stay up to date. I think that very little times is it really necessary now to have an image or something like a video in order to understand the news and get the relevant information. Reading is of course a good option, but there are also very good podcasts out there, and listening is definitely a very good source as well, probably better than visual when it comes to news. With that being said, I hope this helped you out. Let me know in the comments if you have any other tips that you would like to share on that, and I very much hope that you will decrease a little bit your consumption of TV news. Of course, a subscribe and a like would help me out a lot, but also any sort of feedback that makes me produce better content and videos over time. Thanks, and see you on the next one.